The Canary Islands are famous as a warm and popular tourist destination, especially during Christmas when people from Northern Europe flock here to get away from the bitter cold. What's it like to celebrate Christmas on the Canary Islands? Well, that's what I'm gonna find out today. First of all, let's talk about the climate. And no, I'm not gonna go all Greta Thunberg on you. I'm talking about the climate on these islands. You won't have a white Christmas here, in any meaning of the word. There's frequently snow in the Canaries, but you'll have to venture up far into the mountains to see it. The Teide volcano on Tenerife often has -degrees and lots of snow, but that one is 3.5 kilometers tall. If you're staying close to the beach, like most people do when visiting, you're more likely to get a sunburn than a frostbite, especially if you have a pale complexion like us northerners. And that's the main reason why so many tourists come here during the winter months. In Sweden right now it's, let me check. It's -8 degrees. Meanwhile, here in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, it's, getting close to 20 degrees. Sweden is basically Mordor in comparison. It's cold and dark and miserable. Here, not so much. Christmas preparations start in November on the Canary Islands, and then it all just escalates up until New Year's, when it goes off with a big bang. Pun most definitely intended. Just like everywhere else, there's a big celebration with fireworks here on New Year's Eve. But New Year's is not what I'm gonna focus on today. Let's talk about the period before, during, and after Christmas. The biggest celebration happens on Christmas Eve, which is also called Noche Buena, the good night. In other words, the Canary Islanders have good taste. They celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve and not Christmas Day, like some other strange countries. Mainland Spain celebrates Christmas on Christmas Day, though. I tried to find out why some countries celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day and some on Christmas Eve, but it's all a bit murky. It's got nothing to do with Protestantism versus Catholicism, as I thought first. Instead, it seems to boil down to how you define that a day starts, if it's on the morning of the day itself or on the evening of the day before. Anyway, let's talk about the most important thing about Christmas. I'm not talking about celebrating the birth of Christ or being nice to one another. No, I'm talking about Christmas food. On Christmas Eve, the Canarians typically quit work early to go home and have a big dinner with their families. Since I'm all alone here, I won't be doing that. Instead, I have to find some other type of Christmas dinner. Tourists are often recommended to look for a fancy Christmas buffet full of seafood. That's something that I absolutely won't have. Fish and seafood belong in the sea and not in my belly. I know it's a bit strange with a Swede who doesn't eat seafood, but then again, I've never claimed not to be strange. I'm sure that I can find something else to eat here instead. Christmas kebab maybe, or maybe Christmas pizza. As long as I get a Christmas beer, I'm gonna be happy either way. Or maybe it's gonna be hotter than I suspected. Everything is really closed up here after 5 p.m. Well, I went for a burger, but regardless of my choice of cuisine, I can still tell you a little bit about the food traditions that others are indulging in right now. I'm not an expert in Canary Islands cuisine, and when I tried to research different Christmas food traditions, I ran into some problems. Christmas in Sweden is simple. You always have a buffet of ham and meatballs and herring and a fishy potato gratin, and so on. In the Canary Islands, things vary a lot more. One thing that's typical is fish and seafood, and that goes for Spain in general. But the exact dishes to serve seems to be a bit undefined. It's gotta be fish of some sort, and I believe I saw octopus listed somewhere. And also, some people say that king prawns is a must. But it's not as defined as Swedish Christmas food. In Sweden, everyone has strong opinions about what must be included in the Christmas buffet. Here, it's more open to personal preferences. I get a feeling that individual family traditions are more important to Canarians than strictly following overall customs. But that's just speculation on my part. Aside from fish, there's often a lot of starters. Croquetas are delicious fried gooey balls, and they seem to be quite popular. A half-Canarian friend of mine once told me how to make these. Thank you so much for the recipe, Mauri. I appreciate it. Moco canario is also popular. It's a special type of salsa that's served together with papas arrugadas. That's basically salty, wrinkly potatoes boiled with lemon. Cheese is also a must at Christmas tables in the Canary Islands, either roasted or plain. Then you also have different types of stews and soups. Some examples include puchero canario and sopa de pescado, but again, this seems to vary a lot from family to family. Aside from all of that, you also have a lot of meat. Rabbit and chicken both seem to be popular, and leg of lamb seems to be a particular favorite. And pork as well. Both pork roast and pork legs seem to have a place at the Canarian Christmas table. And of course, people drink a lot as well. I may be drinking beer right now, or, well, there's no may about it. I'm definitely drinking beer right now. But I can still talk about the various things that people typically drink here. First of all, there's a lot of wine, which makes perfect sense. Spain isn't exactly unknown as a wine-making nation. There's apparently a special type of wine being made here called volcanic wine. It has a bit more of a salty and savory flavor. That doesn't really sound appetizing to me, but to each their own. There's also a lot of rum being distilled on these islands, and I can imagine that there's quite a few people who have a sip or five during Christmas. You might have heard about ron miel, a popular drink among tourists that tastes of rum and honey. But I've also heard that the Canarians themselves only drink it as a cold medicine. Egg liqueur is also a traditional drink on these islands, and that seems really fitting around Christmas, doesn't it? What with all the eggnog and stuff like that. And while all of these drinks are being imbibed, people are also stuffing their faces with sweets of all kinds. Sweet potato trout, for example, which actually isn't a fish dish, thankfully. Instead, it's a pastry with sweet potato or angel hair filling. Then you have almond candies and different nougats and fudges and cakes and so many different types of sweets. Compared to the rest of Europe, the candies here seem to be focused around pastries and nuts rather than chocolate, though. It's actually a refreshing change from all the chocolates in Sweden during Christmas. Anyway, I think we've talked quite enough about food and drink. How about we explore some Christmas traditions as well? If you're visiting the island of Lanzarote on Christmas Eve, you can experience Ranchos de Pascua. A large group of people will travel from town to town singing songs about remembering deceased loved ones. The tradition was introduced by Franciscans way back in the 16th century. They sing songs to help poor souls find their way out of purgatory. As they traveled through towns, they would also collect alms in honor of the deceased ones. This tradition used to be celebrated on all of the islands, but these days you can mostly just see it on Lanzarote. At the end of the Misa del Gallo, the midnight mass, you can also see one of the oldest traditions in the world, the Tajaraste del Nino. A group of young people dressed in traditional clothes or as shepherds will perform a dance to celebrate the newborn child Jesus. And there's even more folk dances around Christmas. On Christmas Day, you can also see the Baile de la Cunita, the small cradle dance. And there's a lot more dancing and nativity scenes and festivities in general. But the fun doesn't stop on Christmas Day. There are even more traditions on the Canary Islands. I've probably already shown a bit of the Belén de Arena in this video, traditional sand sculptures on the beach of Las Canteras in Las Palmas. Since 2006, people have been building amazing sand sculptures on the beach to celebrate Christmas. It's a must-see if you're visiting Gran Canaria in December. There's also Christmas markets and Christmas choirs and a lot more in the weeks leading up to Christmas. After Christmas, people eagerly await New Year's Eve, when there's more food and more parties and also fireworks. Something a bit unique is the Spanish tradition of eating 12 grapes on the strike of midnight. You have to eat a grape every time the clock strikes at midnight on New Year's Eve. I haven't tried that myself, but it sounds like a choking hazard. Or maybe the Spanish are really good at swallowing. Another tradition is to go swimming on New Year's Day to celebrate the first day of the new year. I wouldn't recommend that you try that in Sweden unless you enjoy winter bathing and making a hole in the ice. But there's more. On January 5th, people look forward to Autos de Reyes. It's a parade showing when the three wise men arrive, and it's quite a big celebration on these islands. You know how people in various countries leave snacks for Santa Claus? Well, on the Canary Islands, kids leave milk and oats for the camels on Autos de Reyes. I think that the camels need those snacks more than a fat guy with a beard. Then, on January 6th, the celebration of the Three Kings end with gift giving, as if you haven't got enough at Christmas Eve, and eating roscon cake. That cake is a pretty weirdly decorated sweetbread, flavored with orange and filled with whipped cream. And after that, Christmas in the Canary Islands is finally over after more than a month of various celebrations. If you enjoyed this little look at the Canary Islands, you're gonna like what's coming up next on the channel. I have a lot more planned for my visit here, but I also have a lot of Swedish adventures coming up. I also share some of my upcoming plans on the 3-star Vagabond Facebook group, so skedaddle over there if you want to see what's coming up. This was a short look at how Christmas is celebrated on the Canary Islands. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe found it interesting as well. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day. Now have a look at this video as well, the one up here in the corner. You're gonna enjoy it. I hope.